A couple of weeks ago, I plopped down on my couch after a long day. I did what's customary of myself, and I'm sure many others nowadays, and I scrolled through my phone for a while. I looked through social media, the usual Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and when I opened the beloved Snapchat app, I came to find that I had lost one of my highest snap streaks with one of my best friends. Now, for those of you who aren't as familiar with what a snap streak is, on Snapchat, there's this little flame emoji that comes up next to your friends' names when you've continued to Snapchat them consecutively every single day. So next to that flame, there comes a number, and that number indicates the number of days in which you have continued to Snapchat each other, thus calling it a snap streak. Now, for some reason, over the years, these snap streaks have grown to define friendships and claim some strong significance in our lives. And it's then that I realized that I was doing just that. Because we lost the snap streak, my friend and I, because we had spent the day together. So that's when I realized that I was placing more significance on this small number on a phone screen than on the quality time I had with my friend. So, since I was caring so much about it, I immediately sent this friend an alarming message saying, "We lost our snap streak. The world is going to end," right? It sometimes seems that way. So here's the thing about snap streaks. Snap streaks are a weak example of communication, at least in this sense. Because more often than not, we aren't using snap streaks to maintain quality conversation and communication with the people in our lives. Rather, in our competitive society, we just want to get that highest number and keep the streak alive. We don't want to let that flame go out once it's ignited. But the thing is, the images that we often send to save these streaks really aren't communication at all. More often than not, they're blurry photos of a wall or someone's face with no words, or the only words that it does say is streak saver, right? Is that really talking to someone? Now let me show you what I'm talking about. So in this first example, you see the photo was taken inside of a car. I hope that the person who took it was not driving while doing so, but that's a whole nother issue for me to get into. Anyway, as you can see in this photo, we see the inside of a car and a building off in the distance, but there's really no substance here at all. And all it says is streak, right? Now this next example you see, I'm assuming is from in a classroom. You can see a whiteboard and a table, but again, there's no words at all. And finally, my personal favorite, the classic forehead shot with the word streak as the caption. I think this one speaks for itself. So the thing is, we use these streaks as a way to communicate, but we're really not communicating at all. We're just focusing on that number and saving that streak. Now, I can't say that I'm not guilty of doing the exact same thing, right? I'm up to the challenge of having the highest streak on campus. But the thing is, it's when I see these weak examples of communication that I truly believe that social media has taken over our lives. It has convinced us that we must stay connected at all times. So our lives are constantly being documented. We're focusing so much on taking the picture of what's happening and recording the video rather than just enjoying it. And when we do so, we then develop this strong desire for instant gratification. Our attention spans are just shrinking because everything happens so quickly at the push of a button. Now with these posts, we also create these illusions that everything in our lives is just sunshine and rainbows, right? Because on social media, the whole story is not there. You can't see the girl who's upset about the grade she got on her test. All you see is her smiling with her friends. You don't see the boy who feels like he can't be himself with his family. All you see is their holiday photo. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be sharing these incredible memories. That's amazing. I'm glad we're sharing them. I merely want to point out the feelings that those posts can often create. Because you see, we often get stuck in this trap of comparing our lives to everyone else's. And when I start to do that, I'm scrolling through Facebook, seeing what everyone else is up to, and then I start to feel more isolated, more excluded, and as if my life is not as wonderful as everyone else's. Now, on the flip side, on a marketing standpoint, social media rocks, right? We can reach so many people within seconds at our fingertips, and that's amazing. When I had my realization about social media, when I lost the streak with my friend, I wanted to get rid of all of the apps on my phone. I wanted to delete everything and test myself to truly unplug and cleanse from these things that I now realize were becoming so toxic in my life. And just as I was about to excommunicate myself, I realized that I cannot do that. I cannot say goodbye to social media. You see, I'm a public relations major, potentially pursuing a career in social media specifically. And as I'm doing so, I'm getting so much wonderful practice doing just that right here on campus as I run the marketing for various student orgs, which I love to do. It is amazing. But just take a look at my Twitter accounts. It is insane the number of notifications that come through my phone in a day. Instagram has even told me you cannot add another account. You have too many. So here's the thing. Social media has not only taken over my personal life, but also my professional. It is my job. But the thing is, I'm not trying to say down with social media by any means, because social media is amazing, and it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and I'm glad it's not. I'm just saying that perhaps we need to grow to be more mindful about how we use social media. So maybe that looks like actually taking a step back and asking yourself, is this something I need to post? Do I need to share this with everyone? And maybe that's a yes, and you press send, and that's amazing. I am happy for you. But maybe that's a no, and you decide to delete that post, and that's great too. Or perhaps this mindfulness looks like using social media, but using it in a way to build a more positive environment rather than a hostile one. Or we use it to build other people up rather than tearing them down. Now, before I finish, I'd like to tell you a quick story about these two guys that you see on the screen with me. It's a story about a time that I put my phone down and what happened. So I was in a 12-passenger van with 10 others traveling to Northern California on a service trip. We weren't very far into our 30-hour road trip when we took a wrong turn. But no worries, we thought. Our GPS quickly rerouted us onto this gravel road that appeared to take us right back onto the interstate. Now that gravel quickly turned to dirt, which quickly turned to mud. And then we grew to be a little bit more worried about our fate on this road. As we looked off in the distance, we saw some headlights on the same road as us, so we thought, well, if that car's fine, then we'll probably be fine too, and just kept moving forward. Now, as we approached that other car, we came to realize that they were quite the opposite of fine. In fact, they were stuck in the mud. And within minutes, so were we. So then our group of 10 all got out of the van barefoot and attempted to push our van out of the mud and onto the pavement, which was just a mere 50 feet away. And after a long while of trying different tactics and trying to get our van set free, we decided she just wasn't going anywhere. So then after getting everyone back in the van, cleaning their feet, making sure everyone was comfortable, my brain went to the people in that car stuck beside us. Now, some of the people on my trip told me they don't think that they were speaking any English. I said, that's okay, and went and approached them anyway. So I go over to the car, and these two faces looked up at me. And they just looked shocked, scared, and uncomfortable. And one of them stumbled through his words to tell me that they don't speak any English. I smiled and said, okay, I speak a little bit of Spanish. And then they got so excited and just started talking to me. And that's when I found out that these two men had been stuck there for over 2 hours before we got to them. You see, they were not only physically stuck in the mud, but they were stuck because they could not communicate in order to get help. At this point, we had already called for a tow truck, so we were kind of just playing the waiting game. But this is when the truly amazing thing happened. Instead of looking at my phone, trying to reach someone from home, or scrolling through social media to pass the time, I just sat and talked with them for about the hour or so that we waited. It was incredible. They told me about their home. I told them about mine. I told them about my family. They told me about theirs. They asked me about being a student. I told them about my study abroad experience. We just talked about life. We even broke into song singing Vivir mi vida by Mark Anthony, which is one of my favorites. It was amazing. And then just as the tow truck was arriving, we actually locked hands and prayed together, which was just incredible. Now, if I had chose to stare at a phone screen like I so often do that night, I wouldn't have had the chance to meet my new friends, Ernesto and Rafael. This same thing rang true throughout the rest of my service trip. You see, in our 30-hour drive to California and our 30-hour drive back to Iowa, our group of 10 grew so close to one another because more often than not, we chose to close our phones and open our minds and our hearts to having real conversation together. And the same thing happened throughout our week of service with all the other volunteers and workers and students. We weren't staring at our phones. Instead, we looked up at each other and talked and made connections. You see, it's through that undivided attention that I think we grow to be more mindful about our media usage in general. So maybe the thought behind a snap streak in itself is not bad. Having constant communication with the people in our lives, that's amazing, right? I just think the intent behind it gets lost. So maybe we don't save our snap streaks, but we start a new kind of streak. Maybe we start a life streak where you vow to have a real conversation with someone every day, anyone. Just talk to them. Or maybe you start a life streak where you call your mom or whoever you want to call once a week, and you have a real conversation. Maybe you start a life streak where you just start going up to people and you say, "How are you doing today?" And you just talk to them. Let's start life streaks of real FaceTime. I mean face-to-face interaction. Because I think that through that real FaceTime, we can begin to build better relationships and give the world our love rather than just our like. Thank you.